Hello all, I'm F. Merlin Rodrigues and I welcome you back to the part 2 of our lesson, The Story of an Hour, written by Kate Chopin. In our first part, we learned the biography of the author and we also started reading the text. In this session, we will continue reading the text. We saw that Mrs. Millard was afflicted with a heart trouble. Therefore, her sister Josephine, with great care, she carefully explains to her sister that her husband is dead. This news is brought by Mrs. Millard's husband's friend Richard. So we understood that she did not get shocked or paralyzed, but instead she wept and she fell on her sister's arm. She wept till her sorrow or grief had gone away, and she goes into her room all alone without allowing anyone to follow her. So let's continue reading from where we left. There stood facing the open window a comfortable, roomy armchair. Into this she sank, pressed down by a physical exhaustion that haunted her body and seemed to reach into her soul. Exhaustion means physical tiredness. She could see in the open square before her house the tops of trees that were all aquiver with the new spring life. The delicious breath of rain was in the air. In the street below was a peddler, was crying his wares. The notes of a distant song which someone was singing reached her faintly, and countless sparrows were twittering in the eaves. Aquiver means to tremble. Wares or goods or products for sale. Eaves means the part of roof that meets or overhangs the walls of a building. There were patches of blue sky showing here and there through the clouds that had met and piled one above the other in the west facing her window. She sat with her head thrown back upon the cushion of the chair, quite motionless, except when a sob came up into her throat and shook her, as a child who has cried itself to sleep continues to sob in its dreams. So we could see that Mrs. Millard has gone upstairs all alone into her room. She goes there and she sits on her armchair. She stood facing the open window. She's sitting down comfortably on her armchair. She is pressing her head and her physical exhaustion into the cushion. And she says that she's opening the window. I mean, she could see the trees outside and she could feel a quiver with the new spring life, that the trees are trembling with the new spring life, it seems. The delicious breath of rain was in the air, so she could breathe the rain, delicious breath of the rain in the air. And she could also hear a peddler, a seller who was crying, who was shouting about his goods, to sell his goods. And she could also hear somebody who was singing at the distance. She could also hear the countless sparrows sitting on the top of the roof and singing. She is also watching the blue skies. Here and there are clouds on the sky. And she's sitting on the chair and she's relaxing, or she's motionless. Our author, Kate Chopin, has given a vivid, beautiful description of the nature outside their house. It doesn't mean that it wasn't existing before, but after hearing her husband's death, when she's coming back and sitting down, she's able to see these beautiful things outside her home with a new life. The trees, the aquiver in new spring life. The word new is very important here because until then the trees were there, but now there is some new spring life, it seems. The smell of the rain coming, approaching rain, or the peddler's cry, or the distant music where someone is singing, or the sparrows singing on the top of the tree. All these things are new to her, or is bringing a new kind of life into her. So it shows that Until then, she was in a confinement. Even now, she is sitting inside the room and watching the beautiful things happening outside. So this is also a kind of a symbolism showing that she was in the confinement. She was in her married life. She was not enjoying the freedom. But right now, she is seeing everything so beautiful. She is looking outside and she see the beautiful scenery outside her. So let's continue reading. She was young with a fair, calm face, whose lines bespoke repression and even a certain strength. But now there was a dull stare in her eyes, whose gaze was fixed away off yonder on one of those patches of blue sky. It was not a glance of reflection, but rather indicates a suspension of intelligent thoughts. In this paragraph, we have few words to analyze the meaning. Bespoke. Here the word bespoke means the line suggests that she has gone through a lot of stressful situation, presumably her marriage. And the word repression means the action of subduing something. Yonder, away of yonder. Yonder means looking at the far distance. Suspension means to delay. So we can see here that she was young with fair and calm face. So the author describes this young lady, the Mrs. Millard, as young lady who had the fair and calm face, but due to this marriage, due to the bondage of marriage and the confinement, now her look has become dull. Dull stare in her eyes, whose gaze was fixed away off yonder. So she is looking somewhere the far distance, and she is thinking something. She was not on a glance of reflection, but rather indicates suspension of intelligent thought. She is not reflecting her life, but she is thinking something else beyond that. Okay, there was something coming to her, and she was waiting for it fearfully. What was it? She did not know. It was too subtle and elusive to name, but she felt it, creeping out of the sky, reaching towards her through the sounds, the scents, the color that filled the air. So she says that there was something that was coming towards her when she was looking at the outside, looking at the far off yondering, far distance. She felt something is coming to her. She was waiting patiently, but there is some fear in it. What was it? She doesn't know. It is subtle. Subtle means it is very delicate, and elusive. Elusive means very difficult to find or catch. There is something coming to her, very fine and difficult to understand or analyze. But she felt it. She's feeling something is coming to her, creeping out of the sky. Something is coming out from the sky to reach her. Okay, the color, the scent, and the air, smell, the air filled with the smell. Everything is being something beautiful, something which she hasn't experienced till then. It is being brought to her, it seems. Let's continue reading. Now her bosom rose and fell tumultuously. She was beginning to recognize this thing that was approaching to possess her, and she was striving to beat it back with her will, as powerless as her two white slender hands would have been. When she abandoned herself, a little whispered word escaped her slightly parted lips. She said it over and over under her breath. Free, free, free. The vacant stare and the look of terror that had followed it went from her eyes. They stayed keen and bright. Her pulses beat fast, and the coursing blood warmed and relaxed every inch of her body. The meaning of the word bosom is chest. Tumultuously means loudly or in a confused state. Slender means gracefully thin. Coursing as flowing or pouring. Here the author explains what is that thing that comes to Mrs. Millard. She is waiting. She was waiting fearfully here. That thing which is coming to her, she is able to recognize right now. What was it? In a very little whispered sound that came to her lips, that is free. The word free is repeated 3 times in a row to suggest that she is now really experiencing the freedom after her marriage, because her husband is dead now, and she could understand, or she could feel, that she's going to be free hereafter. So she's enjoying that kind of escape from the marriage, and she's able to enjoy it with the surroundings around her. Therefore, you could see that her heart is beating faster. Until then, it is shown that, or it is, we got introduced to Mrs. Mellard saying that she has some heart ailment. But right now, her heart is beating fast, and the coursing blood, the pouring blood is warm, it seems. It is now relaxed, and it's reaching every part of the body. She could enjoy the freedom, and therefore her heart ailment, her heart problem is now almost like it is gone. She was able to enjoy the life. Okay, so let's revise what we learned today. So we saw that Mrs. Mellard, who has some heart trouble, is informed about her husband's death by her sister Josephine. The message was brought by Mr. Richard. Later, after crying for a while, Mrs. Mellard goes to her room. She sits down in front of the open window. She could see the trees and smell the approaching rain, hears some peddlers selling their wares, and someone singing at the distance. She could hear the sound of sparrows and the fluffy white clouds in the sky. And she was young, but there is some dullness right now because of the confinement in the marriage life. She could feel something approaching her, but she's unable to understand what is that weird feeling she's uh, going through right now. But slowly she understands the feeling is the freedom from her confined or marriage life. So her heart beats quickly, and she is able to feel the warmth of her new God freedom. So children, we'll stop here for now, and we'll continue reading the chapter in the next part.